Assalamu alaikum. What are the opinions of the Muslim youth on the critical issues in which society face daily? So let's start off with education.
Education, that's a interesting topic. Do you think the education system is fair with state and private schools?
I think the current education system is definitely not fair for the state school because the private schools, 70% of private schools comes from families in the top 25% of incomes. And also private schools do spend average twice as much as per students as a state school. For example, facility-wise is 3 times more higher than state schools.
Could you not argue that these people who earn the top 25% of income, they work hard for their money, they get to choose where they want to spend it, and they want to use that money to provide their children with a better education?
Of course you could argue that, but this country is about freedom of opportunity.
Is it?
It is. You learn about this in school, that there is a freedom of opportunity, that all children in England are meant to have the same opportunities. Now, private schools, it's all well and good that you spend your money on that, and I don't care. If someone wants to send their kid to a private school, send your kid to a private school. But it's up to the government to make sure that state schools the children who go to state schools aren't falling behind simply because they don't have the incomes to keep up with private school students. Because people who go to state schools aren't unintelligent. They get high grades and they can progress to university. But often they come from such like lower class backgrounds or even lower middle class that they can't fund themselves to go further. And we all know that this...
But I don't think all state schools are bad.
Like, of course not.
Of course not, yeah.
But the rougher areas, definitely.
I think that is an issue because when it comes to state schools, you have certain areas, they have a lot of outstanding schools, and then other areas, and it's just down to luck where like you live, depending on whether you get a good education or not. Thankfully, I live in a good area when it comes to education, so I'm quite lucky. But other people, their schools are not quite good.
They're not quite outstanding.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be down to luck, though. It should be that... I'm not saying all state schools should be carbon copies of each other, but kids should have the access to the same equipment, to the same resources, to the same high standard of teaching. I mean, why is it that some schools have so many maths teachers and other schools are struggling just to find one?
Yeah, that is a good point. Yeah. Should we move on to the next question? Do you think the current grading system is effective? What are your opinions, guys?
I think that the emphasis placed on grades ruins people's mental health, and it ruins people's chance to actually enjoy learning.
The thing is, I understand your point about that, but I feel like when it comes to grades, there needs to be a way to like distinguish people and to separate them, and although there's a lot of pressure, I feel like in a way the pressure's good to a certain extent. Like, we need pressure. Like, life isn't always going to be easy when we go into the real world. And I think by putting a bit of pressure on kids, it helps them, because we can't live a world where there's no pressure in school, there's no problems, because when we get into the real world, we're all going to be like shocked because there is pressure.
Definitely.
When it comes to grades, yeah, it's sad, but some people get the top grades, some people get middle grades, some people get low grades. But that's how it is in the real world. So I think it kind of mirrors how it is going to be in the real world.
Of course, but I think there's a point where it gets too much. And I've seen teachers who pit students against each other. Like, this kid is getting these grades, why can't you? That's not good for a child. Some children work so hard just to maintain average grades. And then some children
not
just
an issue
get it
with
handed to
the
them.
revision strategies?
Sometimes maybe, but also sometimes it might be an issue with the fact that these children learn differently. Which, I mean, I guess that moves on to our next question. Does the education system support the needs of neurodivergence? And what improvements can be made? Because I've seen what support is given to neurodivergent children. And obviously it ranges depending...
Do you want to explain to everyone what neurodivergent is, just in case no one knows?
So neurodivergent is the idea that that the idea that differences is how the brain develops are normal, which means that having a brain that works differently to other normal people.
So it's like disabilities, like dyslexia, ADHD.
Some of
autism.
them aren't classified as disabilities, some of them are. It's up to the people to define whether they think it's a disability or not. It also dyslexia, dyscalculia and dysgraphia also come underneath it. Speech and developmental disorders come under it as well. I think you were going to speak about that.
Yeah, so I have developmental language disorder. It is where a communication disorder that interferes with my learning, understanding and using languages. And did you know that 1 in 14 people do have DLD, which is a lifelong disability, and it is used for children over the age of 5, but can only be used for, which is only diagnosed by a speech and language therapist only. So for me, it really impacts on the ability on like my use of range of a more complex and understanding and lengthy instruction. So for example, like if a teacher says something to me, but in like a really long, wordy sentences that I would not understand, I would obviously have to ask them like, can you repeat it, break it down a bit more, so it's easier for my brain to understand.
Would you say that, coming from your experience, that the education system provides you with support, or what would you say?
Well, as a very young age, I have done speech and language therapy since the age of 5.
And was that the school that asked you to do that, or did your family
I think it was my
figure out by
parents and school overall. I've been having like extra help from staff teachers, speech therapists, helping me to get more into communication, making sure I actually understand the words, making sure that I can say these words properly and don't stutter. So I feel like it has been helping me over the years, and up until GCSE times, it has really been helping me to develop and like to create more sentences, to understand it a bit more.
My perspective is a bit different, because I've seen that schools that are dedicated to people with learning disabilities, they can put all their focus into helping these children. But in state schools, you have your SEN teachers, of course, which is obviously stands for special education needs. But then a lot of teachers aren't educated enough on how to recognize.
But is that a teacher's job?
Yes. If your student is struggling, you need to be able to be aware that they're struggling.
A teacher can support them. From my point of view, I think a teacher's there to teach. I don't
Is there only one method of teaching though?
No, but they should be able to teach all different ways. But I don't think the teacher should have the responsibility to start diagnosing people.
Not diagnosing, but be aware and notice if something is going wrong. Because there are so many children that fly under the radar because of stigma, because of the way the media presents it. Like, let's be real. How many we see in the statistics that more males than females are diagnosed with ADHD.
Why is that?
That's because the way it presents in women is different. Males, you see them, they're bouncing off the walls, they're hyperactive. Women, it's more inattentive. So all their hyperactivity, not for all females, of course, it presents differently in everyone. It happens inside their brains. Their brains are racing a mile a minute. And you can't see that. You see the children so quiet and they're introverted, and you're like, well, obviously they can't have ADHD then, but they do, and they struggle. And then because no one has noticed that they're struggling, it affects their grades, it affects their mental health, it affects all aspects of their life. I won't go into the aspects of their life now, I'll just talk about education. But there are resources given to help people who have diagnosis. But if they don't have the diagnosis, they aren't given that support, especially in exams. I mean, we're given extra time, we're given rest breaks. We're given laptops and prompters and readers, but sometimes a student needs something a bit more. And I understand you can't give them everything, but why do you make it so difficult for them to get the support? Why are their waiting lists 2 years long?
What do you think could be done to change it?
I think definitely when people are studying to become a teacher, there should be, even if it doesn't delve into it completely, there should be like a beginning like guide towards being able to spot that a student is struggling. And in schools as well, there should be more emphasis placed on teaching students about it, because kids will recognize it in themselves. They will recognize that they're struggling with this. And so that's good for them to be able to go and talk to a teacher, say, I'm struggling with this. But it's also good for their peers who aren't struggling with it to say, I understand this now. I don't have that stigma. I don't have that ignorance. I don't have this prejudice against kids who are struggling with that, because I actually understand why it's happening, what it is.
Talking about stigma, what do you think about the emphasis placed on mental health versus the lack of support given?
I have so much to say on this. See, my school, every assembly, mental health matters. Talk to your counsellor, talk to your teachers. And when push came to shove, when I actually went and spoke, when I said I've got anxiety, I'm anxious about these subjects, I can't focus, I can't get my work done, they ignored me. They said that, well, that's your problem. Well,
is that what they said?
They did try to help. I mean, some teachers gave so much support, and for that I'm thankful. But there were some teachers who I could tell they were prejudiced, they were discriminating against me for having that issue. In fact, I actually told one teacher, I'm so stressed out about my work, I can't sleep. She said, but I think the solution to that is just go to sleep. Really?
Yeah.
Overall, in 2022, it is statistics. 2022, 1 in 4 19-year-olds in the UK had a mental disorder. This shows that people are really struggling with their mental health in terms of education-wise, making sure that the grades are the best, to make sure that the parents are proud of them. This is why students, they stay up late, midnight, 2 a.m. They study so hard that when it comes to the actual exams, they panic, they stress so much, because all what they think about is the future. They think about, can I get into uni? Can I do my degree? Can I make my parents proud? Those are the questions that is into our brain, is literally questioning us.